Street photography for me is it's more than just photography. Really, it's the study of humanity. Um, when I was a kid, I used to people watch with my dad. We would go to the mall just to walk around, and then we would sit in the food court and we just watch people. And he loved doing it because he had a background in criminal justice. So he just liked to watch people, and at a young age, I began liking it as well. And so after I started picking up a camera, street photography just became natural. And I think it's a good way for us to celebrate normal human beings. You know, you're taking a snapshot of a moment, and you're saying, "Wow, that's beautiful. That real life moment is beautiful. That person isn't a model. They're not, posed. They're not a paid celebrity. They're none of those things. They're just a normal, average, everyday working person that's going throughout their day. And you're taking the time to stop, freeze a frame, and say, that person or that moment or that instance, whatever the case may be, is beautiful. And, or at least interesting enough to remember. So back in, December 2016 or January 2017, I got a call from my little sister, and she said, "Hey, I have to go to a wedding in somewhere in the Netherlands, I don't even know, and do you want to go?" And I was like, "Well, I'm always down to travel. I love going overseas. Yeah, I'm down to go, but I don't know if I have the money to go to someone's wedding just on a whim." And she was like, "Well, I found plane tickets round trip for $800." And I was like, "Sign me up. Let's go." So, I sent her money, and we had the trip planned and turned it into more of the amazing race than just going to someone's wedding. So we ended up going for almost a month and traveling through 5 different countries, 10 different cities, 5 different languages, 3 different currencies. So yeah, it was an adventure. And this is the story of that trip and the street photography I did along that trip. I'm standing outside the Denver airport waiting for Emily and Ashton to show up so we can make our way to Europe. Let's hope and pray I can find them. Nice to find you guys. What do you say? Let's go to Europe.
Let's go to Europe.
Let's go to Europe.
Let's do it.
All right. So September 3rd. September 3rd is the day that we arrived in Paris. We flew out of Denver, Colorado, and made our way to France. Finally got to Paris. And according to my journal, apparently we had many flight and baggage debacles. I didn't even know that word was in my vocabulary, but we had debacles. And we somehow managed to make it through the city using an Uber, and we made it to our Airbnb where we were going to be staying in Paris. Right outside of our Airbnb, right downstairs, there were street artists everywhere. These guys that they literally have this big canvas or clipboard type thing, and they're drawing people, and they're really into it, and they have so much emotion as they're drawing people. And I was like, these guys make pretty good subjects. And then, of course they're asking for money. I think one of the better shots I got while I was there was actually one of these guys that looked like he was a little bit depressed. He's kind of sitting by himself with his hands up in his eyes. And, I just happened to turn the corner and see this guy. And in my head, I immediately thought, wow, no one's paid him today. He hasn't gotten any work. I snapped the photo. And that was one of my more powerful images, I feel like, that I took in Paris. But then after walking around, I started noticing other things. Street art, street graffiti everywhere. And some of this stuff is beautiful. Some of the graffiti and the artwork was just outstanding, and it made for great composition, great shots. So I started taking those and noticing those more. I kind of tried to embrace all the tourists and the tourism things. So, there's little shops everywhere, just everywhere, selling little miniature Eiffel Towers and postcards and trinkets and just all kinds of, tourist things that you would expect. So I started embracing those as subjects as well. If you can't beat them, join them in that aspect. Alright, we're in the airport now. Just checked in, and we are on our way to Biarritz, France, and then Spain. Passadona is a really, really small port town from literally the pirate days. All the buildings are from like the 1400s, cobblestone streets. I was actually really taken back when we first got there. I was like, where are we at right now? I just stepped into, pirate town land. But it was gorgeous. It was absolutely beautiful. I'm really happy that I stayed there. Never heard of it before, but I'm happy that that was where our next Airbnb was. So when we were there, we just kind of stayed at that Airbnb. We didn't really go out and do very much in that small little town because, like I was saying, it's just like a community town. It's not even anything that you would go visit. Most of the time we were taking a bus to and from San Sebastian, Spain, which is a beach town, very touristy. Some of the best beaches in the world are there. So we were taking a bus to and from San Sebastian. But one night when I was in Passadona, I couldn't sleep and I decided to venture out, and I was like, not really, my thing, but some long exposures of the port and the town would be really cool looking back from the ocean. So I went and did that. Went and took a handful of shots, long exposures, talking anywhere from 30 seconds to 5 minute long pictures of just the town and ships coming in and out. Kind of got bored of it, didn't really care. So I started walking back. As I'm walking back through these little tiny winding cobblestone streets that are dimly lit and kind of spooky, I started noticing graffiti. And it wasn't like normal street gang or street artist graffiti. It was like, hey, there's something going on in this town that locals want you to know that there's something going on, but everyone just kind of keeps quiet about it. So I started noticing this graffiti and started actively looking for more of it. And then I came across this shot, which was obviously a very large graffiti piece. And basically I had to Google it after I took the shot. I went and Googled what this could mean, and basically it's protesting against police brutality, because I guess someone was arrested and he was killed by police or something along those lines. And So locals in Spain started doing this graffiti all over the place, not just this little town. And I just happened to be lucky enough to see one of these graffiti pieces. And then you put that together with some of the other shots that I was taking from this little town, and it really wanted me just to investigate it further. But unfortunately, our time there was very limited, and I wasn't able to look as deep into that as I wanted to. Hey guys, what did we do today?
Oh, I put deodorant on.
I was like,
Alright, let's smell yours.
No,
let's
mine
smell yours. You had a hoodie on. Yours do too. You smell almost the exact same.
you don't. They smell
I
good.
guarantee. Look it up.
What did we do today?
Smells each other's armpits.
I'm very happy that I got to go to San Sebastian. It was a pleasure shooting street photography there. That city is so full of life everywhere. The locals are humming about, doing their thing. There's street art everywhere. It's a gorgeous, full of life city. Because of the ocean, obviously, you get a lot of tourists coming in. You got a lot of activity there on the beach. It's a beautiful town. So I was, got to do the traditional street photography thing and get people that are just so full of life and interesting looking and just beautiful characters out on the street, and people surfing. San Sebastian was great. I highly recommend going there, especially if you're a photographer. It is so welcoming. Nobody gave me the stink eye while I was taking pictures of them. The locals are friendly. It was great. It was absolutely great. Always heard good things about Madrid when it comes to photography, and let me tell you, it did not disappoint. We were only there for a day, so I didn't have a whole lot of time, but I made sure that I hit it as hard as I could. So as soon as we got there, we went and dropped off our bags at the hotel, and I grabbed my camera gear and headed straight out for the streets. And we made it to a very large town square, and there was a festival going on, and people were wearing costumes, and there's just all kinds of partying going on. Tons of people packed everywhere, and they were all locals, and it was absolutely wonderful. My head was spinning. I couldn't take pictures fast enough. I got some really great shots of people in costume, people celebrating their city, all that kind of stuff. So that was wonderful. So later on that evening, I went out by myself to do some nighttime street photography. And walking around, I was taking a couple shots here and there, some street graffiti and some empty streets and, people at bars and just random shots that you'd expect from street photography. Well, as I'm walking down this very dimly lit, empty street, I see this beautiful set of graffiti on this wall. So I go in to take this shot of this street graffiti, and I'm leaning over, taking these pictures, looking at the back of my camera, taking these pictures, looking at the back of my camera, and I'm not really feeling it, but I'm in Madrid. I'm only here for a day, so I'm trying. And all of a sudden I hear someone yelling at me, "Hey, what are you taking pictures of?" Looking around, I don't see anybody. I can't see anybody at all. And I hear someone yelling again, so I look up, and there's a person in a, 4th-story balcony looking down at me, and they're yelling at me, "Hey, what are you taking pictures of?" And so I say, "Oh, this graffiti, it's really pretty." And this older lady then proceeds to tell me, "Hey, take a picture of me?" And I said, "Well, gladly. I've got the wrong lens on, but I'll do it." So fumble around and grab the right lens, and I aim it up towards her, and it is just pitch black. You can't see anything. So unfortunately, I had to crank my ISO all the way to even get a shot of her. But I managed to snap the shot, and it was probably one of the most significant shots that I took this entire trip. Not because it's beautiful, because it's not. You can barely even make out that it's a person because it's so noisy. But because this lady and I then had a connection. I stood on the street and talked to her like this, facing up, for probably 40 minutes, 45 minutes, somewhere in there, and we just talked back and forth. And she spoke perfect English. She told me that her name was Abdullah, that she was originally Kurdish. She lived in London, England, but then she moved to Madrid, and she didn't speak Spanish, so she was overwhelmed to find somebody that spoke English that she could have a conversation with. She said that she hadn't left her apartment in months because she goes out and she just can't speak the language. So she loved just having that simple conversation from street to fourth floor balcony with me. And she never came down, I never went up. We never shared more than that conversation. She said she would look me up on Facebook, but I'm still waiting for the friend request. But that moment was probably the most significant moment in street photography for me while I was in Spain, let alone this entire trip possibly. I was so excited to go to Prague. We get off the plane in the Czech Republic, and mind you, we're in the old Soviet Union, which I think was, I don't know, it's just super cool. I love history, and that's just super awesome for me. But as soon as we get off the plane, they literally rip us off the plane and they put us into a bus, and I'm not even exaggerating, they shoved people into the bus like they were just cramming us in. And I'm all holding all my camera stuff, and I got luggage everywhere. I got a backpacking bag on, and super tired, super uncomfortable. They're cramming people into the bus, and I'm like, wow, we just went back to Soviet Russia. Well, we finally, that bus arrives at the airport terminal. We get let off, and it was super awesome. There wasn't even any customs. We literally just walked right out of the airport into Prague. Woke up the next morning. Open my shades, I get to see out into Prague, and it is gorgeous. And I am so ready to go.
I made it to Prague last night. I haven't gone out and done anything yet. So this is the first morning here.
I grabbed all my camera gear, threw on a jacket because it was nice and chilly, went out into Prague. And let me tell you, Prague did not disappoint. I kept track in my journal of how many shots I took in each city, and Prague is like 3 or 4 times more photos than every other city. I filled like 3 SD cards shooting in Prague, and it was glorious. There's so much to see. So many interesting people just everywhere. The city itself is so gorgeous because it's all original. It was the only city, the only major city during World War II that wasn't touched. So all the streets are original, all the buildings are original. It's super old and super interesting. So I don't really know what else to say about Prague except for wow. I've never been to Berlin before. I've only been to Frankfurt. So when we got to Berlin, I was kind of taken back by the fact that it's super dirty, it's super gritty, everything's super old. The town is just kind of overrun with Syrian refugees. It was not at all what I was expecting. But I feel like that's the problem going into a trip like this with that sort of perception, is that, oh, I already know what it's going to be like, and I don't really need to experience much more because I've seen this before, done this before, experienced this before, yada, yada, yada. But the fact of the matter was that I was actually pleasantly surprised that it was such an old, such a dirty city, because you get that extra grittiness, that extra... It just adds something, some power to your photos, to your street photography. And even though we were only in Berlin for 12 hours, 18 hours, something along those lines, it was less than a day, I still managed to get some good shots. Groningen, Holland is where we went next. And, wow. That place is awesome. Never heard of it before. Apparently there's a major university there and everyone knows what it is, but I've never heard of it before. Super happy that I went there. That was one of the most amazing little towns I've ever been to. We stayed in a very, very small community outside, so we had to take a train into it every day, but taking that 15-20 minute train ride into Groningen was worth it. And I got so many good shots in Groningen, Holland, because there was something happening every day that we were there. I think I was there for 3 or 4 days, and every single day there was a festival, there was a street market, there was, street performers out and about. Just everything was happening all the time, every day. And all I really have to say about that city is bikes. Everyone wants to say that Amsterdam has a lot of bikes. Groningen, Holland has like 1,000 times more bikes than Amsterdam. That's all I'm going to say about that. But yeah, so there are bikes everywhere. So naturally, I got lots of shots of bikes. Amsterdam is awesome. It's like everything that you hear about it. It's just super cool. The people were awesome in Amsterdam. The tourists were awesome. There's so many different interesting things to take pictures of. It doesn't matter if you're a street photographer, a landscape photographer, what kind of photographer you are, there was something for you in Amsterdam. The waterways, the people, the cobblestones, the buildings, everything was so cool. I spent the majority of my time in the red light district, and I know how that sounds, but I went down there to take pictures of drunken tourists or locals, or to try to get some, not really footage, but just to try to get a sense of what these prostitutes, these slaves are going through. Seeing them in the window with guys, yelling at them or talking to them or paying them money and going inside is kind of sad when you actually think about the fact that they are slaves. They are sold on the black market to do that type of work. And to see it with your own eyes is just incredible. That experience in and of itself was worth going to Amsterdam, but it's something that I wish that I never had to experience because it is so sad. And it just makes me more want to go back and try to help those people and try to actually be able to give them a voice, to give them interviews, to take their portraits, to talk with them, sit down. So today is the last day in Amsterdam. It's also the last day of Europe. It's kind of a bittersweet moment. Realizing that the trip is coming to an end, I say bittersweet because I cannot wait to get home and not living out of a backpack, or, actually being able to pay with stuff with US dollars or my debit card, or just simple things like using an American plug. But it's been awesome. I've met cool people, I've had cool experiences, I've eaten cool things, I've seen cool stuff. It's kind of a trade-off, the experience for being comfortable and content in the norm, the day-to-day that we're so used to. If there's anything that I want you to take away from this short documentary, is get out there, experience something. I don't care if you're a street photographer, I don't care if you're a landscape photographer, or an architecture photographer. Just go out and experience other cultures, other places in the world, because you will not be disappointed, and you will have photos and video or whatever your medium is beyond your expectations. Traveling really helps grow. It helps mold you. It helps you grow as a photographer, a videographer, or a painter, or a drawer. I don't care, what you are. It helps you grow. It helps you learn from experience. Throughout the trip, there's a whole lot of terrible points, baggage being lost or broken or stolen, or missing flights, cabs, trains. It doesn't matter. I mean, there's all kinds of bad things that happen when you travel, but the good things far outweigh the bad. And I cannot wait to go on the next trip. I'm not sure what that will be yet, but I am very much looking forward to it. And I could not have anticipated the trials, tribulations, and successes of this trip. I was talking with my photography professor, and when I was actually outlining this documentary, I had used the word successes. And he said that was a perfect way of putting things. When you as a street photographer, or me personally as a street photographer, when I snap that shutter, it doesn't even matter about my settings. My settings could be completely wrong, but when I see that moment happen in my viewfinder that I want to capture, and that is just like it's that shot for the day, because every day has its shot. And when you get its shot, that's a success. That is just a huge win. Like, when you get that one frame that is absolutely perfect to you as a photographer in every way. Now, someone else could look at it and think it's complete crap, but when you as a photographer and artist get that one frame that's absolutely perfect to you, it's worth the entire trip. I don't care if I spent $3,000 on this trip, $6,000. That one frame from one city is worth it.